I've been blessed in my career to get to go to some of the biggest games at some of the best venues in all of college football. And they've given me some very strong opinions on which are the toughest places to play. So I'm looking at this EA Sports list of toughest places to play as they get us excited for their video game that's coming out, EA Sports College Football 25, coming out next month. And they've, worked to simulate these stadiums in this game. And you've heard me talk about what they did. I've talked to the creators of the game about what detail they went into to try to make these places feel realistic and feel like you're actually playing there. And I got to tell you, I don't know about their list, because when I found out they were creating this list, I said, all right, I'm going to make my own list of the top 25 toughest places to play in America. And the way I was thinking about it from their perspective, from the video game perspective, not necessarily from the perspective of if you play in this stadium in 2024 in real life, how hard is it going to be? Because if that's going to be the case, like for the last couple of years, like we're going to have Georgia number one every single time because they had the most talented roster in their stadium, and that makes it a very difficult place to play. So the way I looked at it was, let's say you're a person playing this video game and you're in dynasty mode, so you can create the best version of any team that would play in this stadium, of any home team that would play in this stadium. How would I rank the stadiums then if it's the best possible version of that team playing in that stadium? And we were fairly close with my number one and their number three, Tiger Stadium, LSU. Listen, 102,000 plus screaming people. They've cooked the most amazing things in the day before the game, the night before the game. They've got the ice luges at their tailgates where they're pouring vodka down the luge, and somebody's sitting there with their mouth wide open, and then they're going into the stadium. Like, these are the drunkest fans in America. They are some of the most passionate fans in America. And when LSU is good, I don't know that there's a better place in college football than Tiger Stadium. The whole experience feels like it would just intimidate the hell out of the visiting team. You don't know if they're going to try to tip your bus over. Like, that's why I had them number one. Now, EA Sports had Kyle Field number one. Now, Kyle Field is an amazing place and has gotten incredibly loud since they did the expansion in the past decade. So I went to some games before the expansion, some very good games, like the 2013 Alabama game that they didn't win, but it was very close. Johnny Manziel dueling with Alabama. It was awesome. The environment's incredible. Since they've expanded it, it's even louder. It's over 100,000 people. They're waving the towels. Before the decks kind of went straight up, but it was fairly open on the ends. Now it's completely closed in. It holds all the noise in. But here's my problem. And again, it's hard to separate the stadium from the team playing in it. But it doesn't feel like that environment has caused Texas A&M to win a lot of games that they weren't going to already win. So I have a hard time making that number one. Like, I was at one of the best games they've played at that stadium since it expanded. I was at the 2016 Tennessee game that went double overtime. It was an incredible environment, just unbelievable. And Texas A&M won that game, but I didn't feel like the environment won them the game there. And it's strange because it is an intimidating environment. It is loud. Like, when they lock their arms and sway, you can feel the stands sway. They're doing the Aggie War Hymn. It's incredible. But I had them at number 7 just because I couldn't put them that high because it doesn't feel like the environment carries them that often. So my number 2 was Bryant-Denny Stadium, Alabama. That was EA Sports number 2 as well. And that's an interesting one too, because Bryant-Denny Stadium, so my mom went to Alabama, and she used to always say before she passed, like, Bryant-Denny was where you played the games nobody cared about. Like, you went to Legion Field in Birmingham to play the big games. And since they decided that they wanted the big games to be on campus and they've expanded Bryant-Denny, it's a totally different place. Totally different. So an older Alabama fan probably still thinks in terms of Legion Field being the place you go for the big games. But Bryant-Denny is loud every time. Now, yes, do they leave early when they're playing Samford or UT Chattanooga? Yeah, absolutely. They do leave early. But when they're playing a big game, it is loud start to finish. It is wild. It is the way they've built it up. The noise stays in. And yeah, even if the team's not Nick Saban, Alabama good, like I went to the 2005, I covered the 2005 Alabama-Florida game. And Florida was pretty good coming into that game. That's a Mike Shula team. Now, it was a pretty good Mike Shula team, but that environment was one of the best environments I've ever seen. And it wasn't because they were competing for national championships necessarily. That they hadn't been that good before, weren't sure how good they were that year, but just an incredible environment. So I don't think that's Nick Saban team dependent. Number 3 for me, I stayed close to home, my alma mater, Ben Hill Griffin Stadium, the Swamp, the place I've seen most, more games than any other place. It's not just because Florida was good under Steve Spurrier and good under Urban Meyer that the crowds would go crazy. Like, there's an architectural reason for the Swamp being as intimidating an environment as it is. And so, like, the history of the Swamp is it's right after the big crash of 1929. They've got to build a stadium. They've got to fund it privately. They're getting donations. They don't really have a lot of money to hire somebody to plan it. So the coach at the time had come from Notre Dame and calls Newt Rockne and says, "Hey, can you send the plans for Notre Dame Stadium so we could kind of copy off them?" That's the bowl of Florida Field. The bowl of Florida Field, the original one, is essentially Notre Dame Stadium, which is not on my list, is very low on EA Sports lists because it's not a particularly intimidating place to play, other than sometimes Notre Dame has a really good team in it. But what Florida did is, instead of just stacking decks on top of the bowl, like most stadiums do when they increase capacity, they just sort of kept building up the sides almost straight up vertically. And it holds the noise in. It is so freaking loud, even when it's not that big of a game, even when the crowd isn't as into it because they don't, maybe they're not happy with the coach, which happens quite a bit at Florida. But when they are good and when the crowd is into it, there's maybe not a more intimidating environment in college football. It is, and a lot of it, again, is structural because it's 90,000 seats, but you could fit that stadium into the footprint of a lot of 60,000 seat stadiums. It's just like those big the NFL stadiums that seat 65. You just drop Florida Field there and it would fit into the footprint. Like, I don't think this is entirely accurate, but it feels like it when you stand in the inside Neyland Stadium, like on the field at Neyland Stadium at Tennessee. The sidelines are kind of wide, so it actually feels like you could drop all of Florida Field, including the stands, into the bowl of Neyland Stadium. I don't think that's true, but that's what it feels like. That's how tight the Swamp is. It's not the tightest stadium in America. We're going to get to that, but it is very tight. The stands are very close to the field, to the sidelines. It's a very intimidating place to play. Another one that we seem to agree on, EA Sports and I, Beaver Stadium, Penn State. I had it at number 4. EA Sports has got it at number 6. This is the loudest Big Ten stadium. This is, again, built vertically and holds the noise in, but that student section in the end zone, like if you're the opposing quarterback driving toward the student section, you're looking at that S, because remember, you have the group of fans where some of them are white and then around them they wear blue so that it creates the S for Penn State. It is incredibly intimidating. It is just a sight to behold. And I wouldn't want to be a visiting quarterback having to pilot an offense into that end zone. Like, especially whiteout time, like they're just awesome fans and they get so loud, 107,000 plus. So that one I got at number 4. Now, where I will quibble with the EA Sports list. So they've got Ohio Stadium at number 4, Ohio State, the Horseshoe. And they've got Sanford Stadium, Between the Hedges, Georgia, at number 5. I would argue that both of these are very, very tough places to play, especially recently, because of the team that is inside them. Not necessarily because of the stadium themselves. Like, Ohio Stadium is a beautiful, glorious college football cathedral. You've got the arches and you got the dome, and it's pretty, and it feels like you're walking into a historic building. But it doesn't get that loud for 105,000 people. It's loud because it's 105,000 people, but it's not that loud. So it's not necessarily the stadium that is causing you to not play well. It is Ohio State's team that causes you to not play well. Sanford Stadium is louder, I would say, than Ohio Stadium. But is it louder than most of the stadiums we're going to talk about in the SEC? Not necessarily. I don't think it's louder than LSU. I don't think it's louder than Florida. I don't think it's louder than Auburn when Auburn's really rolling. But the team inside is awesome. Now, here's where Sanford Stadium, you've got the hedges. That's one thing. But also, it is one of the coolest architecturally that you're going to see. It's dug deep into the ground. And on one side of it, basically, the upper decks are the only thing visible from street level. It's really cool. And also, you can walk to downtown Athens. You can walk to 5 Points. Like, you have all of the coolest college town in America within walking distance, which is pretty cool. So that part of it, yes. But that part doesn't contribute to intimidation to anything else. Georgia having a bunch of NFL draft picks is what makes that a tough place to play. So that's why I had Sanford Stadium at number 11 and Ohio Stadium at number 12 on my list. Now, one that we both had, well, actually, they don't have it in the top 10. EA Sports didn't have Neyland Stadium in the top 10. Tennessee fans, I know how you get. I've grown afoul of all Twitter before. You go after these folks for this one, because when Neyland Stadium is going, when Tennessee is good, when the game is big, and the reason I didn't have Tennessee number one, because there are games where they could be number one, but I had them at number 6 because it is somewhat opponent dependent and is somewhat how good are the Vols dependent. But a game like the 2022 Alabama game, you will not find a better environment in college football than Neyland Stadium. You won't. And when they are going and they're good and the opponent is good, it is deafening in there. The place will shake when a big play happens. It's awesome. So I got them at number 6. Just ahead of them at 5, I have Jordan-Hare Stadium. And Jordan-Hare, for me, is the one where there are certain days where it does not matter who Auburn is playing. Doesn't matter. The visiting team is not winning. I was at the 2017 Georgia game 2 weeks later at the Iron Bowl. Both those games were like that. Like that 2017 Georgia game, Georgia's the number 1 team in the country at the time. And after about 5 minutes of just, you had the flight of the eagle and you had everything. After about 5 minutes, you realize they ain't winning this game. Like it won't matter what they do. They ain't winning this game. And then the Iron Bowl 2 weeks later was the same. And like the 2010 Georgia game was like that when Cam Newton was there. Like you have certain days like that where you don't have a chance. Now, the reason they're not number 1 is because their days aren't always like that. You get a New Mexico State game last year, for example, where there's no excuse for any of that. Like the environment should be able to intimidate a team like that. And you can say it's the opponent. They schedule a better opponent, but other stadiums get up. So that's the only reason why I don't have Jordan-Hare Stadium even higher, because I do think there are days at Jordan-Hare Stadium where it is just off the charts, where you cannot hear yourself think. Number 7 on the EA Sports list, they had Camp Randall, Wisconsin. Now, I've got Camp Randall lower on my list. I've got them at number 15. This is a great place to watch a game. It's a downtown stadium. It's a different environment. Like if you're at the game, if you're a fan going to the game, it's not as easy a tailgating situation as the big land grant universities that are in the middle of nowhere, and you have lots of different places to park near the stadium, and you can spread out and tailgate. It's not quite like that, but they do get after it, obviously, in Madison, and it gets loud. And you can feel, you can hear the bolts creaking in the stadium when they do jump around between the third and fourth quarters. I think EA Sports has a little higher opinion of this as an intimidating place than I do, but it is one of the cooler places to watch a game. One of the games I attended there, 2010 Ohio State. Wisconsin won. They tore down the goalpost. It was pretty awesome. I remember finding one flip-flop on the field as I walked across from the Ohio State interviews to go interview Wisconsin people. And I thought that one flip-flop probably has one hell of a story to tell. Like this is a place where the fans truly do get after it. Now, our number 8s kind of tell the difference in how we made our lists. They've got Oklahoma number 8. Gaylord Family Memorial Stadium. I have Autzen Stadium in Oregon at number 8. So Gaylord Family Memorial Stadium is a very nice stadium. Oklahoma fans cheer loud, but they're not that loud. They're due for an education, like when they go to Auburn and when they go to LSU this year, about what actually being loud is. They haven't really been exposed to it, so they'll figure it out. They'll get it. But it's really Oklahoma has had excellent teams in the stadium, and that makes it a tough place to play. Autzen Stadium, while they've also had excellent teams in Oregon, Autzen Stadium is a very intimidating place to play, despite only holding 60,000 people. Like standing room only, it's only 60,000 people. And you cannot believe, if you've been in these 100,000 seat stadiums, you cannot believe that 60,000 people can get this loud, but they can. I think some of it's architectural because of the way the stadium is built, where the middle of the stands goes up higher than the other parts of the stand. So I think that traps some noise in and makes it bounce back and forth. But a lot of it is just the fans are juiced up and going. When they hit Joker and the Thief, that Wolfmother song, before the game, the duck rides out on the motorcycle, like it is a roar. And it's like a little more than half the people that are at Michigan Stadium, which was number 17 on my list. It's one of those that it's the biggest stadium in the country, and it was number 16 on EA Sports list. So we were very close on this. And it's big, and it gets, reasonably loud because it's 110,000 freaking people. But the way it's built, it's spread very wide. The Rose Bowl is a similar construction where it doesn't hold as much noise in, but it is still an intimidating place to play. But I think a lot of the intimidation factor probably comes from how good Michigan's been on the offensive and defensive lines lately. So EA had Autzen at number 11. Another one we seem to agree on is Memorial Stadium at Clemson. They had it at 12. I had it at 13. It's a beautiful place. Death Valley is the nickname of LSU's stadium and Clemson Stadium. It does feel like you're in a valley when you're on the field at Clemson because the sides are so steep. But I think the open end zone, which allows them to have one of the greatest entrances in college football, I think it also keeps the noise from getting trapped in there. Lets some noise escape. It's not as loud as it could be. It's not as intimidating as it could be. Although it is, again, one of the coolest places to watch a game, to play a game in college football. Another one that's sneaky intimidating, and when I got to play the video game, I was glad that they did recreate this, is Kinnick Stadium at Iowa. Kinnick Stadium is very intimidating. It's very loud. It's not as claustrophobic as some of these other ones, but especially because they're so good on defense, it can kind of feel that way. And you wonder, like, if they ever had a really good offense and they didn't get bored for half the game, like how crazy would the fans be? How loud would they be? So maybe they're better on offense this year. Maybe a healthy Cade McNamara helps. But I do think Kinnick Stadium is one of the tougher places to play in America. And I will say, this is not an intimidation thing. It's kind of the opposite of intimidation. But the wave to the Children's Hospital, all of the fans, both of the teams on the field between the first and second quarter, is the coolest tradition that has developed in college football in the 21st century. And I hope it lasts forever. And I just chokes you up every time, every single time. It's so cool. Now, I want to go back to my list. One that I had ranked much higher. Actually, they didn't even have this stadium ranked on the EA Sports list, Boone Pickens Stadium in Oklahoma State. I had it at number 10. This is the most claustrophobic stadium in America. There's no place where the stands are this close to the sideline. And then you've got the people with the paddles hanging over the front row. Like, it is nuts. It is a crazy place to play a game. And if you're the visiting team, it doesn't feel like any other place. So I thought that was a glaring omission from their list. I felt like it had to be in the top 10, again, just because of the claustrophobia factor. Like, it is a tough place to play. We both had Doak Campbell, Florida State, at number 9, which I think it's one of those there. I don't know that TV does it justice in terms of how loud it actually is. And also, when you come out of the visiting tunnel, so you come out of the visiting tunnel out of one of the end zones, the first thing you hear from the back of your head is the marching Chiefs are up in that end zone, blasting that war chant. And then you see everybody doing the chop. And so it's just like a sea of arms, and you're hearing this, oh, and it's insanely loud because the band is right behind where you're coming out. And look, when they had those Mickey Andrews defenses in the 90s when Bobby Bowden was there, like, yes, the team on the other side of the field is what's really intimidating you, but the environment certainly didn't help. And that's one of those where it gets insanely loud for big plays in big games. I think about, there's a Notre Dame game a few years ago, ended on a fairly controversial call. It was an offensive pass interference. Like the roar of that pre-play was off the charts. So Doak Campbell, another one, very intimidating place to play if you're the visitor. I want to throw some from the bottom of my list, and these are toward the bottom of the EA Sports list as well. So Reynolds Razorback Stadium, they had it at 23. I had it at 24. This is one where you catch the right game, you catch the right opponent. Holy crap, people have no idea. Like, Texas went to Arkansas a few years ago and learned this the hard way. Like, when Arkansas fans want to go, they go. And this is a very loud place when it wants to be. Elsewhere in the SEC, Williams-Rice Stadium in South Carolina is like this too. Like, when they smell an upset brewing. So I was at the 2009 Ole Miss game. That's the one where Sandstorm really kind of took hold at Williams-Rice Stadium. But I was also at the 2010 Alabama game. I think if you watch that 2022 Tennessee game, similar thing. Like, also the upper decks, very wide at Williams-Rice Stadium. When they get going, the decks can sway. That's kind of crazy and very, very intimidating. Another one that I think people don't necessarily appreciate as much as they should. Rice-Eccles Stadium. Remember the Florida player tweeting when they got there last year? Little ass stadium. Yeah, it's little, but it's mighty. They call it the Mighty Utah Student Section, actually, the MUS. When that thing gets going, it is one of the pound for pound toughest places to play in college football. And it's just it's a beautiful setting. Beautiful setting. So down in the valley, you've got downtown Salt Lake City. You go up the hill, you have the University of Utah, and then there's a mountain in the back. And so you are kind of sitting up the hill, kind of perched in this stadium. And it's really cool. One of my more fun memories there is Pittsburgh opened there on a Thursday night. Week 1, I want to say it was like 11, 12 years ago. That place was off the chain. And again, it's a smaller crowd, but they go. One more. My number 25. I'm going to throw that one out there for you. Another one, smaller crowd, but they absolutely rock when it's time to rock. Martin Stadium at Washington State. So if you've never been to the Palouse, like, it really feels like you have landed on another planet. So for these visiting teams, they get in there and they're driving around and there's like, are we on the surface of the moon? Like, what is this? And then you get into this little stadium where the people are hopped up on Fireball and God knows what else, and they are going crazy. So if you are like those Pac-12 teams that would get sent there on a Friday night, and those folks in Pullman knew that they were the show, that everybody's watching them, that they're going to see Old Crimson flying on College game day the next day. Man, doesn't get much better than that. So Martin Stadium, my number 25, just This was a lot of fun. Me and EA Sports do not agree on this, but I think we might have come at it from different directions. But it's interesting because I came at it like a guy playing Dynasty mode, and they came at it like, I don't know. I'm not sure what their criteria were. I've explained mine. Feel free to argue with me in the comments or on social media. You know where to find me, Andy_Staples on X, on Instagram. But this has been a lot of fun. And EA Sports is going to drop a few more of these things. It's going to be highest rated offenses and defenses in the game. They're going to drop that later this week. Then we might be getting some player rating reveals. Whew. We got less than a month till we can play this thing, boys and girls. I'm pumped. I'm pumped. And this has gotten me pumped for actual college football to see some of these stadiums full again and rocking. Thanks for watching. Can't wait to see you guys in a stadium soon. Thank you so much for watching. Just a reminder, subscribe to this channel right here so you never miss an episode of Andy Staples On 3. And oh, by the way, watch all the other great videos on the On3 Sports YouTube channel.